Hello, Milwaukee Bucks fans. Welcome back to Bucks Latest presented by Fan Arch. I'm your host, Dean Simon. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We are still very much on the road to 1,000 subscribers. We just crossed the 760 subscriber threshold. I'm very thankful for all of you out there that have already pressed that big red button. And if a few more of you can as well, I would really appreciate that. And also turn on those post notifications to stay up to date and in the know with all the latest Milwaukee Bucks updates. All right, so first on the docket today, the NBA officially released the schedule for the NBA Cup, their in-season tournament. Of course, the Milwaukee Bucks will be trying to defend their NBA Cup crown. They, raised the trophy in 2024, which it's so crazy. Just a little side tangent, how things change in the blink of an eye in the NBA nowadays, where the Milwaukee Bucks won the NBA Cup, of course, last year, defeating the eventual 68 win and NBA champion Oklahoma City Thunder and MVP Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. With Damian Lillard on the squad, of course, he had a huge hand in helping the Bucks raise the NBA Cup trophy. And now, not only is he going to miss probably the entirety of the regular season due to a torn Achilles, he'll be doing that not as a member of the Bucks after the wave and stretch. And no one really foresaw that conclusion that he would be returning to the Trailblazers going into this year, and things just change in the blink of an eye nowadays. But anyways, we know who the Bucks will be playing and on what dates in within their grouping in the Eastern Conference. So to start things off, their first two games will be back-to-back home games against the Chicago Bulls and Charlotte Hornets on November 7th and 14th, respectively. Two pretty easy passes there. But both teams have certain guys that can pop off at any moment. Of course, the developing Modest Buzelis and Brandon Miller, they can just happen to go off for 28 one night and upset the Bucks. But that's a separate thing. And then the final two of the Bucks for, kind of beginning like grouping games in the NBA Cup will be against the Miami Heat and the New York Knicks on November 26th and 28th respectively. And I'm really intrigued by the Miami Heat's iteration this year. Of course, acquiring Norman Powell via trade, pairing him with Tyler Hero. It's, going to be interesting to see how that works out in general. And alongside Bam Adebayo and the developing Khalil Ware, and they have a lot of moving parts, a lot of established guys now. Of course, first time All Star Tyler Hero, and Ware coming in to fill up really important minutes at center or power forward based on his skill set. So the Miami Heat, they're always looking to compete, of course, under Pat Riley, and it'll be no different this season. Of course, this could have been foresaw by, the Norman Powell acquisition. They want to win this year, and matchup wise, I really am going to be interested in seeing how they fare against the Milwaukee Bucks. Of course, I'm always excited for the Bam and Giannis matchup, so I guess we'll see what happens. But for the New York Knicks, of course, can be looked at as the Bucks' main competition in the Eastern Conference now. Of course, the Cleveland Cavaliers are there, maybe the Orlando Magic, but I don't think it's impossible for the Bucks to slot in as anywhere between the number 4 if things go well, if Giannis has another MVP caliber season, if the rest of the guys step up, if all goes well, I think the Bucks with a dominant Giannis can place anywhere between 4 and 7 in the East, and going up against the New York Knicks in the NBA Cup, it will prove to be a really great test, and I'm hopeful that Giannis himself and the front court pairing defensively of he and Miles Turner will be enough to maybe scrape by in a game like that. But it will be an MSG, it'll be a raucous atmosphere. So, it again remains to be seen. But we know the schedule for the Milwaukee Bucks, and now they can begin to prepare and, kind of get into, again, their specific matchups and different philosophies that they're going to get into with regard to each game. Because of course, they're all super, super important. But, anyways, moving forward, Finley Cool of Brew Hoop, he came out and basically said that the Milwaukee Bucks have a big three problem. And, just I'll put it out there now that he came out and said that the Bucks won't be a contender in 25-26. And while I do like to stay on the positive side, I like to see the glass half full. It's not necessarily, as he says, it's probably not a hot take that the Bucks won't be true championship contenders next season. And you have to agree, unfortunately, even though this team is very deep, and that's something we're going to get into. But the way that he talks about their big three problem is that he decided to go through the NBA and kind of rank every team's big three, or who he believes to be their top three players. And for the Bucks, he chose Giannis Antetokounmpo, Miles Turner, and Kevin Porter Jr. And his reasoning was that Kevin Porter Jr. would be the most consistent starter out of the rest of the guys in the starting group, and you can't really disagree with that. But he used those three guys, and they ranked as maybe the 16th or 17th best big three grouping. And for that reason, he's very skeptical of what the Bucks can actually do in 25-26. But the reason why I don't think this is as big of a deal as it is, even though we are talking about uh, every team's best players, the players that are going to give their teams the best opportunity to compete for a title, the way that NBA teams are constructed nowadays, it's all based on depth. And of course, we saw that with the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers meeting up in the NBA Finals. Both teams were two of the deepest teams in the NBA, flat out. And they had multiple guys that could, fill multiple different roles and wear so many different hats that they were just both ultimately buzzsaws when it came to the postseason. And I'm not saying that the Bucks are necessarily on the same track or that they have the same caliber of talent on their bench and to round out the rotation, but bringing back Gary Trent Jr. and Torian Prince and bringing back Ryan Rollins on a long-term team-friendly deal, and Bobby Portis, of course, who's proven to be one of the most consistent, if not the most consistent, sixth-man scorer in the NBA for the past 3 years, and Kyle Kuzma, if he can turn things around. This team is an AJ Green. This team is more deep than people realize, especially if some of the young guys like Ryan Rollins, like Chris Livingston, if he gets spot minutes, or Ajax, if they can step up and prove to be really consistent contributors in the lineup, this team is more deep than people realize. And I'll definitely say more deep than the media realizes, because with the amount of scrutiny that the Bucks and the Bucks front office has been getting throughout this offseason, you would think that they've made a million wrong turns and the future is incredibly bleak. There's no future prospects at all, or at least for the immediate future. But I think the opposite. I think that if all goes well, if Giannis again has that kind of undeniable MVP caliber season, and these guys just come along for the ride, it's not impossible to see the Bucks somehow getting to a second round or an even Eastern Conference Finals berth, and that will be because of their bench. Mostly it will be because of Giannis, but that's just one player. In terms of it being a big three effort, that's not really the case. It'll be a collective strength in numbers type of effort from this team, and that's why this doesn't really bother me that much. Of course, you would like your big three to be one of the best in the NBA, but their depth, it's going to hopefully solve some things for this team in 25-26. So after that, I want to talk a little bit about Miles Turner, and while I'm on the topic as well of the Bucks receiving a lot of scrutiny from the media and a lot of talking heads, there are a couple of different people like Bill Simmons, of course, who came out and said that the move for Miles Turner was so desperate and it was stupid essentially, and then he eventually retracted his statements and kind of went back on it. But NBA 2K, they are joining the club in terms of disrespecting the Milwaukee Bucks, because they decided to leave Miles Turner off of their top 10 list of players with the highest block rating. And that's ridiculous. And when you see people on this list of, again, the top 10 guys in the NBA, all centers or power forwards that have the highest block ratings, you have guys like Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren, numbers 1 and 2, which are very understandable. But then you get to number 6 is Adem Bona from the 76ers, and Jay Huff from the Indiana Pacers. And I'm not saying these guys aren't great shot blockers. They really are, especially for the number of minutes they play on a night to night basis. But to leave Miles Turner, the two-time block champion, career 2.2 block average, averaged 2 blocks a game this past year, why is Miles Turner nowhere to be found? And this can only be a result of the Milwaukee Bucks scrutiny from the media, because there is just no possible way that Miles Turner is left off of a list like this. And Jay Huff at number 10, by the way, he has a 90 block rating. So you're telling me that Miles Turner, again, career 2.2 blocks a game, got up as high as 3.4 blocks a couple of years ago, has less than a 90 block rating? I know this isn't going to change the world or anything, But we have to get a little bit serious with these kinds of ratings. Whoa, my camera just went crazy. But we have to get a little serious with these kinds of ratings because what what are we doing, 2K? I feel as though we're not being serious right now, and we could be a lot more serious if we tried. So, Ronnie 2K, anybody that's in charge of those ratings, please, please, please fix this because I'm having trouble wrapping my mind around it right now. But anyways, final thing on the docket is that while I talked about the Bucks' depth in general being kind of underrated and that their depth will have a chance to right a lot of wrongs from this past year, the Bucks shooting guard group is especially underrated and they can be better than most in NBA media or just NBA fans alike believe. And this is in agreement with an article that Fansided's John Spiza wrote this morning where he specifically mentions Gary Trent and AJ Green as two guys that are, you know, very, very meaningful to the Bucks game plan, of course, and they could both have great seasons next year, and also puts Ryan Rollins in there, even though I would like to see him fill more minutes as a backup or tertiary point guard. But he says, and I quote, Trent and Green are, in their roles, extremely valuable as 3-and-D marksmen. Green, in particular, is a net rating demon. Both have a chance for breakout campaigns in 25-26. With Damian Lillard gone, Trent should trend closer to his scoring numbers in Toronto, where he did put up like 18 or 19 points a game. Uh, Trent should trend closer to his scoring numbers in Toronto. He already showed he can step up when called upon in the playoffs with two 30-point performances in 5 games. And of course, with that last sentence, those performances may be lost to history by the broader NBA world, but Gary Trent truly proved to be one of the Bucks' most consistent scorers outside, or their most consistent scorer outside of Giannis Antetokounmpo in a playoff setting against a team that eventually went on to go to the NBA Finals. And we know that both Gary Trent and AJ Green are unbelievably consistent, at least from a three-point shooting perspective, but both guys compete on defense. And even if Gary Trent's, let's say, his net rating numbers or advanced stats, if they don't really show it on the defensive end, the eye test for me just it completely refutes that because he is always trying his best, at least. He's always moving his feet, keeping hands in front of him and kind of hand checking guys, but that kind of thing is still allowed in the NBA nowadays. And Garrett, he's just always putting in an effort. And AJ Green, of course, he's got a little bit of a stronger frame, a little more compact frame, but strong. And that serves him well on the defensive side of the floor, too. So both of those guys will obviously have a chance to really impact, uh, a successful season in 25-26 for the Bucks. It just, you know, you would imagine or you would like to hope that both guys would stay above 40% from three, maybe above 41% from three, and compile a defensive box plus minus of maybe zero point 0.5 or 1. That would be, if both guys could end with those kinds of stat lines, that would be a sensational outcome for the Bucks and for the Bucks' depth, because both of these guys are going to have a huge role in again in impacting winning for the 2025-26 season. Anyways, that will be all for me today. Thank you very much for watching another episode of Bucks Latest presented by FanArch. Again, I've been Dean Simon. Make sure to like, tell me what you think in the comments, and subscribe, and also turn on those post notifications. All right, I will see you guys in the next one, and go Bucks.